Hello and welcome to another edition of Pop and Scott Talk Baseball. How you doing today, Dad?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Doing fine. Came home. We didn't have any rain, so I grilled a steak. And
I was gonna say, y'all floating yet, or
no, that was Friday night and yesterday. We had about an inch and a half of rain.
yeah,
it was. It's my next door neighbor. I think he was out there building a big boat in his backyard. I mean, it was.
Right, yeah, that's
animals lining up. There was a couple of squirrels lining up 2 by 2. I mean, it was
right.
We've had a lot of rain. I mean, that's just well, it's been like that. I think in Carolina too. I mean, it's just we've had a lot of rain since
up and down the East Coast. Friday, I watched the Mets Phillies game, the first half, or not Friday, Thursday. What day was it? I don't know. Earlier in the week, so I texted my friends at Philly to ask them, was it raining that hard? It didn't stop, but they played in it and got it done. And that was an interesting series. They played 2 in New York and then turned around and played 2 in Philly.
2 in Philly, yeah. And Baltimore's they've had a ton of games that they've had rain delays. They've gotten them in, but they've had rain delays because there's rain all up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, that's why
coming across the country and all those horrible storms that people down in northern Florida where that tornado hit Florida State University, they still don't have power. They said they might not have power all summer. That's how much damage was done.
Wow. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit before we got started. I've been watching baseball. I don't know if I want to call it baseball, but have you been watching the O's or the Nats?
Yeah, I've been watching the Nationals and the Orioles, and I caught Virginia Tech and Virginia baseball game, and I've watched in the last couple of days. I've watched about 3 or 4 of the girls softball games. They were on early enough before the baseball started, so I could see they're starting their sub regionals, and some of those games were pretty good. And so I've watched a lot of balls hitting bats. But Andy, the good report this week is the complaining about the umpiring has been minimal.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a couple, nobody's perfect, and we've talked about that before. It's the blatancy and not owning up to it when you want to, you're looking for somebody to say something. I think it's, we don't want to hear from the umpires. That's the last thing. But yeah, so I'm watching. We always tape on Sunday, so I'm watching the Mets and Marlins, and I think Pete Alonso just went yard. Nope, off the fence. But he came up to bat, and it came out this week that Pete Alonso in the offseason got offered a 7-year deal for $158 million, and he turned it down.
And he turned it down, yeah.
Right. So
that's one of my little blurbs today.
Right. So that tells you right there, he's going to go to free agency and he wants to see what he gets. I still don't know. And actually I've watched some reports since that happened that he might be kicking himself afterwards because, first base is there's a lot of them. There's a lot of power hitting first basemen, and he's not one of the top fielding first basemen. He's not hitting for average. There's other first. Yeah, and he's going to get his 40, but is that worth? The Mets probably gave him a very fair offer.
It was in line with the same. There was basically within a few $1 million of the same offer that the Atlanta Braves signed Olsen for.
Right.
That's where the Mets got it from. That's where they got the information.
Because he's not Freddie Freeman.
Led the league in home runs last year.
Right. And Freddie Freeman hits for average. He leads the league in doubles a lot of times, and and I love Pete Alonso. He's my favorite player right now. And I mean, that's the only reason why I'm watching the Mets now is to see Pete Alonso play because I don't have much else to watch the Mets for. But, it's been coming up on the New York channels about not if, but when is he going to get traded? Because they're not playing well, and you might as well get some. If he's not going to re-sign with you, why are you holding on to him?
Exactly. Why? When trading deadline comes up, get what you can.
Right. So, and I'm not mad at that. That's the business side of it. And if you get mad at that, and I'm a Mets fan too, and if you don't want to sign, then I hope the Mets can get a couple of young players. They have a couple of guys that can play first in the minors. I don't know if they're going to hit 40 home runs. I don't know where they're going to get that power from in that lineup. JD Martinez has hit, I think, only one home run since he's been with them. But with that lineup, you don't have to pitch to JD Martinez. You can pitch around him.
Well, not only that, but if Alonso's not there, and you get a better defensive first baseman, he's liable to save you quite a few runs too. And sometimes that doesn't show up in the statistics, but it counts.
Right. Or he might even put more balls in play. You don't know. There's other numbers to look at other than just home runs. That number, I know chicks dig the long ball, but, we got to get.
I've got the bases loaded and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning. The bases loaded and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning. Who would I rather have up at the plate? Pete Alonso or Rod Carew?
Right. Or Rod.
Alonso might get you a grand slam, but he didn't hit over 300 like Rod Carew did. Right. Rod Carew might get you the base hit that wins the ball game.
Right. And that's kind of the point I was kind of making. There's other numbers, and these guys look at, they'll comprise 2 players to make up the 1 player to make that number up. But it's just interesting. Thought, as soon as it came up, I was like, well, this is something to talk about, even though I try not to talk about the Mets as much, but I thought that was interesting.
Well, the other thing, we brought it up, so I might as well say this now. I was going to wait till later.
Okay.
But I might as well say it now. A lot of the numbers crunchers, include like Brian Kenny and people like that on MLB, well, batting average means absolutely nothing. The only thing that matters is on-base percentage. We just talked about that. You have men on first and second and 2 out. Rod Carew walks. The bases are loaded, haven't scored. Rod Carew gets a base hit, knocks in the guy from second base. Rod Carew's on first. His on-base percentage is exactly the same.
Right.
But he knocked in a run. He didn't walk. So you can have on-base percentage all you want, but the batting average does count because it depends on when you get the on-base percentage.
And another thing is when the on-base percentage doesn't always reflect like what you do with a man on third and less than 2 outs, right? You can hit into a fielder's choice and scores a run. You can hit into a fly ball and scores a run. But actually, the fielder's choice counts against you. It's an RBI, but you go against it. Well, a fly ball, that doesn't count against you. You drove in a run. It's a sac fly. But neither time you scored it, you knocked in a run, but you didn't get on base. Your on base percentage goes down.
If you're up at the plate and you bunt somebody to third base on a sacrifice and you get thrown out at first base, it doesn't.
That's what I was just saying.
But if you walk, that's your on base percentage, but you haven't moved the runner over.
Right.
The guys on second base, you move them to third, but if you walk, you got the on base percentage, but you haven't moved the runner over.
Right.
So I don't think.
My big stat is always RBIs with 2 outs. That's the stat.
Oh, that's huge.
I love that stat.
The year the Nationals won the World Series in 2019, they led all of Major League Baseball in 2-out RBIs.
The last time the Mets were in the playoffs, they led the National League with hits with 2 outs, scoring RBI. That's a huge stat. I'm always like, I look at those stats like that because those are the teams that's usually in the top of the the standings. That's a huge stat, and I like to look at all the numbers and not just on base percent. Batting average to me still means something. It just I don't put as much weight on it. I'm not looking. The days of having a 300 hitter on every squad is over.
That's over.
Look at them.
If you look at the batting averages up and down the league now, you have a lot of guys hitting in the 200s and some of them hitting in 190s.
Right. So the Mets have one guy over 300, but that's because he doesn't have a lot of at bats. I'm looking at the Marlins right now. Their highest batting average is Lopez, who is playing second today, but he's a utility guy. He's batting 283. So I don't know how many at bats he has this year.
He's hitting 283. Everybody else on the Marlins is hitting less than he is. Where are they in the standings?
Well, they're the only team that's below the Mets. The great Jazz Chisholm is batting 259. So that's you're dead on it. And if they made more contact, the batting averages will go up just a little bit. Put more balls in play. There's so many strikeouts. Nothing happens on a strikeout other than an out, and you're going to sit down. There's no putting the ball in play. You put the pressure on the defense. Strikeout does nothing, and it's been a while. I remember an interview with Longoria years ago when he was still with Tampa on that very thing before this whole uppercut swing, putting the ball in the air type of deal, where he said he was swinging hard on every pitch trying to hit a home run, because if he hits it to a double play, that's 2 outs. But if he strikes out, it's 1. And I'm thinking to myself going, yeah, neither one of those instances anything good happened. You got to put it in play for a chance of something to happen, period. So, I mean, also, if you hit a fly ball and somebody catches it, you're out. That's just stupid sayings, But it's the mentality of the game now. And that's what I've said before. The game is the same. The actual fundamentals of the game is the same. But how they play it is different now. It's just changed. And it changes generationally. It'll come back around where a team will put the ball – like the Royals did here, they won it with now the bullpen is what everybody wants, but they had the difference where they had a lot of guys that put the ball in play. I still think if you got guys that put balls in play, you got a better chance. Strikeouts, you have none. Unless you have that pitcher in fantasy baseball.
Yeah.
But any other news you got there?
Yeah. Earlier in the week, Ronel Blanco of the Houston Astros was suspended 10 games because he had stickum on his glove. He said, and then it came out the next day, had a little bit on his arm above the glove, and he said it was where rosin was on there and the sweat got in. Well, I didn't know this, but there's a rule in Major League Baseball this year that you can't put rosin except on your pitching hand. That's the only place you can put the rosin. You can't put it on your other arm. I didn't know that was a rule, but that's what they said.
Right.
That's what I read when I was reading about the suspension.
I saw the highlight of that in the Astro announcers going off talking about, and they talked to, and there was somebody in a booth somewhere, like in studio, talking about it. And he was saying, and it was an ex-player. I didn't recognize him, so I don't know who it was. But, that was a common thing that people would put rosin above their wrist on their throwing hand or in their glove hand, because the sweat would get down in your glove and make you right. You didn't want a wet hand in your glove.
Exactly.
So he said, and they were talking like it was all right. I guess they didn't know that rule either.
Well, I've seen pitchers pick up the rosin bag, raise their glove up like that, and do this.
Yeah.
So that they did that all the time. That's why when I read that, I said, wait a minute.
Yeah, and then they'll take their hand and wipe it around there to get grip on the ball.
And I'm
instead of
going,
getting
wait a
it
minute,
on.
I never heard of this rule before, but that's what I read. So maybe that, I don't know.
Yeah, and you're probably and it's probably 100 because but there was foreign substance on there. As soon as the umpire saw it, it was more than just rosin.
Well, he said it was the stickiest stuff he'd ever seen on a glove. That's what one of the umpires said.
And the umpire, you can read his lips, that said it wasn't on there on the previous inning when he checked it. So they checked in the previous inning, and then he came out and he kept going to his glove before he went to the ball. That's why they checked the glove.
Well, and then also Yamamoto came out for an inning and had to change his gloves because the umpire didn't like. He had a blue logo on his glove, and he didn't like the looks of the blue logo, so he went in the dugout, got another glove, came back out there, and had the same blue logo on it. But they said it was different, so everything was fine. It was a different glove. There was nothing sticky on the glove. They couldn't figure out why that happened.
Right. I know there's a rule. The pitcher can't have anything distracting. Like they can't have gloves in their back pocket. They can't have jewelry hanging around their neck. You can't, because
to catch the batter's eye.
Yeah. So, they can't have long tassel or whatever, their leather straps swinging all around.
And there were a couple of injuries this week. Jung Ho Lee, the KBO, the kid that came over from KBO playing for the Giants, was having a really good year. Jumped up on the fence in center field to make a catch and dislocated his shoulder. He's got to have surgery, and he's out for the year. If you want to be a pitcher in Major League Baseball, you want to be a pitcher in Major League Baseball and want to have a long career, don't pitch for the Dodgers. They got another one out. Emmett Sheehan, who came up last June and was in the starting rotation this season, is out with Tommy John surgery. Another starting pitcher for the Dodgers. Now, I had the opportunity to watch the Skeens kid again with Pittsburgh, and he was playing the Cubs again. He pitched 6 shutout, no-hit innings. He struck out 11 and had 1 base on ball. That was impressive. The kid that was pitching for the Cubs was just about as good, and the Pirates won walk-off 1-0 game. The next day.
Right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The next day, Shohei Imanaga of the Cubs, the kid from Korea, he pitched 7 shutout innings. Now, he didn't win the game. The Cubs won it in a walk-off of 1-0. He won it in a walk-off. His earned run average is 0.84. Now, I would say that right now he is the leader for possible Cy Young in the National League, except for one other guy. He pitches for the Philadelphia Phillies. Aaron Nola? No. Wheeler? No. Nope. Young man named Ranger Suarez of the Phillies. He is 8-0, boys and girls. So it was those two guys. I mean,
the Mets touched him up a little bit the other night, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't say enough about the Phillies starting pitching. I mean, they're really doing well. But earlier in the week, I said, well, if I'm going to pick my number one team, because they had the number one record in baseball last week. I didn't look this week, but I was going to say, yeah, they're the number one team in baseball. I changed my mind yesterday. So we'll get to that in just a minute.
Yeah, because I want to talk about something. Yeah, go ahead with the news.
I want to talk about my man Dela Cruz, who plays for the Cincinnati Reds. The young man is a walking double. If you put him on first base with a hit or a walk, he's got second.
Yeah.
He stole 4 bases. He stole 4 bases against the Dodgers on Thursday. 4 bases. One of them he walked, stole second, and then stole third. And scored on a sacrifice fly. I mean, he's phenomenal. And this year he's hitting better. And we talked about Pete Alonso's getting the offer. But then yesterday, a young man named Louis Gill pitches for the Yankees, pitches 7 shutout innings, and Soto hit 2 home runs. Right now, the Yankees are the best team in baseball, in my opinion. They've won 6 or 7 games in a row. Now, they're not playing the greatest teams in the world, but it doesn't matter. Their major league teams are beating. And because you have 30 teams in Major League Baseball, 16 of them have losing records.
I was going to get to
there's a lot of bad baseball teams.
What do you think is the best division in baseball at this moment?
The most competitive?
The teams with the most wins, what division?
It's probably the American League Central.
And you would be right. 4 teams out of the 5 have a winning record. Everybody else only has 2 teams with winning records.
Yeah. And I mean, there's just a lot of bad baseball teams.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. It's a lot of mediocrity this year. I've seen it. And I still think it's going to be good for competitiveness at the end of the year. But right now, it is just because everybody, the National League East, the American League East, the National League West, those divisions really, I mean, they suck. I mean, Toronto, Boston, they're not doing anything. Marlins, Washington, the Mets, they're fighting for the worst teams in baseball right now. I don't know which one is the worst, but you can pick either one of those 3. And I would say I agree with you. And,
well, if I had to pick one, I'd pick the Marlins. But
the Mets have lost 2-3. They're back, and the Mets are up 4-2 right now. But it's just I have to agree with you. I thought we have Arizona, who I thought actually made good additions. They're having a losing record. They're not playing well. The Padres are looking decent,
but they've got a losing record.
Yeah, well, I think now they're got a winning record.
But they're 7.5 games back.
Yeah.
It's only in May, and they're already 7.5.
Well, that's like the National League East. I mean, it's May, and the Braves are 4 games back. The Phillies.
Right. I'm like, so the Braves are out of pitching. I mean, their pitching is they've got so many people hurt.
Right.
And the Phillies are playing great ball. Now, but this is what I got to say about the Phillies. And now I might be wrong about this. They played the Braves the first series of the season, didn't they?
Yeah.
And the Braves won 2 out of 3, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Maybe Mike O will correct me. Maybe your other Philly fans will correct me. They're your buddies. That's the only team with a winning record they've played all year. We're in May, and I think that's the only winning team they've played all year. Now, there might be some teams they played earlier that has a winning record now, but when they played them, they had a losing record. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think so. And I'm just saying. So, but Philadelphia with that pitching staff, and that's a killer lineup, and they're up 4 games on Atlanta in the NL East. In the Central, Milwaukee's up 2 games over the Cubs. That's going to be a good race, I think. In the West, the Dodgers are up by 7.5 over the Padres and 123 over Colorado. In the American League East, the Yankees are up by 2 games over the Orioles. Now, Orioles have some problems. The bullpen is not good, folks. The bullpen is not good. It's shaky, to say the least. Now, to say it's shaky, it's probably an earthquake. But they're shaky. The other thing is, they're outside of Gunnar and Westburg and whatever his name is, Westwood, whatever his name is, and Westburg and Adley Rushman, they're not hitting. Cowser, who came up there and everybody started wearing the cow suits and everything, he's like 1 for 28 in his last 28 at bats. The rest of the outfield is hitting like 195. Even Santander is in a slump. So, and the center fielder's hitting 190. So, it's just, they're just not, they're still scoring. But like yesterday, they had their starting pitcher pitched 6 innings, leading 2-0. 7th inning, relief pitcher comes in there and gives up 2 runs. It's 2-2. And then they got behind 4-2, and they scored 1 run in the 9th, made it 4-3. So both the Nationals and the Orioles lost in the last inning yesterday.
So let me ask you this, Ed. You always talk about the bullpen is the most important part of your team. Do you think it'd be a good move with all that talent in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, that they get rid of some of that for relief pitching? Because I always feel like that is throwing away talent, because I'd rather get starting pitching than relief pitching.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah, go ahead.
2019, at the All-Star break, the Washington Nationals have a losing record. They trade for 3 relief pitchers at the break, 3 relief pitchers, and they bring in the Baby Shark.
Yeah.
They go on a tear, and they win the World Series against the Houston Astros. And the reason they won were those 3 relief pitchers. There are some closers out there that are doing very well right now. And the Orioles could give up 3, 4, 5 of their best players and still have the best minor league system. Their starting pitching looks pretty good. It looks good. When they leave the game, they're winning.
Right.
So they need relief pitching. And it's the name. If you don't have those relievers that can come in there and shut the door or keep it closed after your starter leaves, because no starter pitches. We've had 2 complete games all year this year. I had 3. That's about it. You're in trouble. And it's like in the American League, when the Yankees have the 2-game lead on the Orioles, in the Central, Cleveland is 1.5 games up over Kansas City, and the Twins are in 3rd place. And in the West, Seattle is leading Texas by a game and a half, but boy, those records are right around 500. Everything's right around 500. And I've always given Tampa Bay credit for running the way their organization is run. Well, I can't slight another team. There's another team that every year, everybody says, well, they're not going to amount to anything. And every year they might not make the playoffs every year, but they come so close. And when they get in the playoffs, they usually don't do very well because they can't score. But it's the Cleveland Indians. The Cleveland Indians every year.
Right.
People say, well, they're not going to do much this year. We're going to give that Central Division, you and I both picked Minnesota to win that division. But they might still do it. But I'm telling you that the Cleveland organization, they managed to put – the one thing Cleveland does is they put good pitching staffs together. They always have good pitching, and they really usually have very good defenses. And then, of course, they got Ramirez. He's the only real big bat in that lineup. But, Cleveland is always plays decent ball. So, that's the way it looks. The Dodgers have been playing so-so ball the last couple of weeks, but here it is. We're just in May, folks, and it's 7.5 game lead. How are you going to get up for the game when you got a 7.5 game lead? You got it locked up. They've got the National League West locked up right now. Right now.
Shohei's leading baseball in home runs, ain't he?
Who?
Shohei
is number 1 in OPS, 1900 or something.
I know. I saw he's either first in the National League in home runs or all of baseball in home runs.
I think he's leading all of baseball in home runs. I'm not sure, but I know he's number 1 in all of baseball in OPS.
Yeah.
And
he could just hit.
And it now the stories have been coming out again where they're wondering if the Dodgers are going to try to talk him into just hitting and not going back to pitching next year. But he wants to pitch, so
right.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. When you got all these superstars on your team, they start running the team sometimes.
Yeah.
Look at the NBA. Each NBA team has a coach, but whoever the star is on the team is actually the coach.
Yeah, they're the one. Yeah,
calling the shots.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure, when the agreement was, hey, I'm coming here, but after I'm cleared, I'm pitching. I mean, that might have been spoken of. I'm sure it was while they were signing that contract. That probably was I'm sure he brought that up.
Well, and they don't have to worry about until next year. But I mean,
and the thing is, it has to be something catastrophic for him not to be able to hit if he gets hurt again pitching. Right? He can still hurt his arm and still hit. It'd have to be something really catastrophic for that to happen.
Well, the other thing too is once his arm heals, they're talking about if he doesn't go back to pitching, they'll put him in the outfield.
Right.
So he can. So then that frees up another spot in the lineup where they could.
He's too good of an athlete to be DH. Man, that's just. They could be using that for somebody else. I would hate to see that with.
Well, see, that's what's hurt the Yankees. I mean, the Dodgers. They've had like a 500 week, and one of the things that's hurting them is the same thing that hurt San Diego last year. The tail end of their lineup's not hitting at all.
Right.
And so if those first 5 guys don't hit, they're done. And that's what happened to San Diego last year.
Right. Yeah.
The guys at the end of the lineup couldn't hit.
Well, not only at the beginning of the year, nobody was hitting. So that made it even worse.
Yeah.
So if nobody's hitting, that makes it even worse. You pick and choose your poison when you're going in as a pitching staff. But when you're back end, the back end doesn't get some hits, and that's another thing that I like to look at is if you could stretch out that, because I thought their lineup was going to be really good because you add Shohei into that mix that really stretched their lineup out, where they were pretty stacked up to 6 or 7.
Well, I mean, Gavin Lux isn't hitting. Taylor's not hitting.
When do you give up on Gavin Lux? When does he become a bust? I mean, I know he's already a bust. When he came up, he was supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread at second base. But he makes errors. He can't hit. I mean, when did they give up on him?
Well, yeah. I mean, last week we were talking about a guy for the Nationals that was between the third baseman, and I thought of it after that evening when I was sitting there watching TV. It was Keyboom.
Yeah, and Mike wrote
it in the comment section that it was Keyboom, and I remembered it that evening when I was sitting there watching TV. I said it was Keyboom.
Yeah,
I mean, because they used to play Keyboom when he'd come up the bat.
Yeah,
in Washington, that old song from the 20s. Right. And anyway, I remember it was Keyboom, and the guy was a great third baseman. He could play the third base. He could play defense, but he couldn't hit a lick.
Right.
And he did hit a couple of home runs. Oh, he's ready now. And then he go over 30.
And then go to AAA and bat 400.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. But Lux, I mean, it depends on his contract too. I mean, if you have a contract with somebody, you got to pay them. You might as well keep them.
Well, I'm sure he's on a rookie, still a rookie contract. I'm pretty sure it's not only so much of it's guaranteed.
But he's the reason.
It's all 100. It's baseball. It's 100% guaranteed.
Well, Mookie had to go to shortstop because he couldn't play shortstop.
Right.
They put him at shortstop, and he looked like he was trying to catch the ball with 2 ash can covers.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I say. He's just, Muncy played second last year. I mean, they got some options. I just don't know.
Yeah, Muncie's
They're
playing.
probably kicking themselves for trading Michael Bush a little bit at the beginning of this year because that guy is tearing it up. He's probably right now first for rookie of the year. Maybe I got to rethink that. So he's with the Cubs, so that's National League. It's gonna be close. Because it's those pitchers, man. That I knew. I kind of felt like the older pitcher from Japan would fit in faster than Yamamoto. I thought he would, because he's with age, you learn how to pitch, and Yamamoto's still learning how to pitch. But you know,
Well, since his first 2 games, Yamamoto's been doing pretty well.
yeah. Well, he's a talent, but I still think the other guys do it a little better. But
yeah, I've seen Imanaga pitch twice, and I mean, that you talk about impressive.
yeah,
He is impressive.
I was hoping he was going to be a Met. I was hoping the Mets was going to pick him or win that bidding war. But anything else, Dad?
No, just College World Series starts pretty soon, and the girls are playing in their playoffs, and then baseball is still, I guess you would still call it more or less the beginning of the year. We've had 2 months.
Well, I think we're a quarter away. We've done a quarter of the season.
About that, something like that. So you're really still there's teams like the Houston Astros. They won a few games, so they were coming back a little bit. But because their third baseman started to hit. But
right.
But they've come back a little bit. The Western Conference, the Western Division, every team has holes. They have a lot of talent, but every team has holes. So I'm just wondering. I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen with Atlanta during the year with their pitching and what the Orioles are going to do about their bullpen. Those are the 2 things I'm wondering about, because I picked the Yankees and Phillies to go to the World Series, and right now that looks pretty good. But that's May. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. Well, we're going to leave it there for today. Thanks to everybody for watching and remarks and thumbs and upping and everything and hitting that subscribe. Till next time, see ya.